juicy one for you today. The Milan Derby in the Coppa Italia semifinal.
Always a big one.
Always huge. And this is, you always think about how many times these teams have played. It's astonishing. 243.
Wow.
243 times his two teams have played. This will be the fourth time just this season.
Wow.
And
wow.
get this, 18th time in the last 5 years.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, just constant. These two teams are just constantly intertwined. They play each other so often.
Yeah, it's a constant chess match between these two sides over the years.
They know each other so well. And of course, another one coming up in 20 days, another Milan Derby. But before we get completely lost in the lights of the San Siro, let's take a quick look at the other Coppa Italia semifinal first leg. That was Empoli versus Bologna. And this one took a bit of a turn, wouldn't we say?
It did. Empoli fielded what was described as a Pagruya squad. I don't know if you're familiar with that term.
Essentially a reserve squad.
Yeah. They're playing Cagliari to avoid relegation, so they're really focused on that. But the interesting thing is this reserve squad knocked out Juventus.
So I was going to say, they knocked out Juventus with this same reserve squad.
So it makes you wonder about Juventus. But
yeah.
Bologna, they came in there strong, a 3-0 away victory.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't even close. It was total domination.
Orsolini, he continued his scoring streak, and then Dalinga, he got a brace. His second goal was beautifully set up by Yohan Ndoye. And this really puts Bologna in a great position. They haven't been to the Coppa Italia final since 1974.
That's almost 50 years.
Yeah, it's a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Really long time. And it looks like this could be Bologna's best season since 1964, so they're really coming up.
Yeah, they're on a roll. So now let's turn our attention to that Milan derby, AC Milan versus Inter. Of course, traditionally Inter has been seen as maybe slightly the favorite in these matchups. But we're looking at two teams in very different situations coming into this game. You've got Inter, who are top of the league. They're in the Champions League. They've got this huge upcoming Champions League clash against Bayern Munich.
Yeah, and that raises questions about how Inter will approach this semifinal, right? Do they prioritize the Champions League, or do they go all in on this Coppa Italia chance?
Right. And then on the other side, you have AC Milan, who are, let's be honest, not doing great in the league, and their manager is widely expected to be leaving at the end of the season. So they're almost entirely focused on this Coppa Italia as their way to get a trophy. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, Two very different approaches going into this game. But before we get into the tactics and everything, let's take a look at some team news. So for Milan, they're definitely going to be without Ruben Loftus-Cheek. He had to have emergency appendicitis surgery.
Oof. Yeah, that's not good.
So, I mean, potentially out for the rest of the season, which is a huge blow for them.
Yeah, big loss. He's been really key for them in the midfield. A lot of energy, creativity. So it's a big blow for Milan.
Huge blow. They're also going to be without Emerson Royal. And there's a question mark over Thea, the central defender. He had a late injury, so not sure if he's going to be available. Now, Inter's got some injury concerns of their own. They'll be without Dumfries, and Asllani is suspended. There are some questions over Lautaro Martinez. Not sure if he's going to be fit. And Taremi, we know he's out for about 20 days. And then there are also some question marks over De Vrij and Vertesi. So they've got a lot of fitness concerns as well.
Yeah, a lot of key players potentially missing for both sides. Really makes you wonder how the managers are going to approach this game.
For sure. So let's try and predict these lineups. For Milan, in goal, we'll probably see Maignan. Calabria should be at right back. Theo Hernandez, as always, on the left. But the big question is at center back. We might see Gabbia, we might see Pavlovic, or there's even a chance that Tomori could make a very quick recovery and be slotted back in.
Yeah, that back line is a real concern for Milan, especially after that Napoli game. They looked really shaky at the back.
For sure. In midfield, I think we're likely to see Krunic and Fofana, kind of a solid defensive-minded pairing.
Yeah, very solid.
And there's some talk that maybe Reinders will be pushed a little bit further forward into more of an attacking midfield role. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. On the wings, you got to imagine Leo's going to start on the left.
Of course.
And then on the right, it's probably going to be Pulisic.
Yeah, likely.
And up front, I think the most likely starter is Jimenez, especially after how well he played against Napoli, even though he missed that penalty.
It's interesting, though. I did see some reports suggesting that maybe Jimenez would play up front, or maybe Abraham.
Oh, okay.
And then, depending on what happens with Reinders, if he's pushed forward, maybe Pulisic moves into that attacking midfield spot.
Mhm.
And then you could see someone like Chukwueze come in on the right wing.
Oh, interesting. So a lot of different possibilities there.
Yeah, some tactical flexibility for Pioli to play with.
For sure. All right, let's take a look at Inter. Now, with their crazy schedule, you have to imagine there's going to be some rotation for them.
You would think so.
But I think, and I think a lot of people agree with this, that Inzaghi sees this derby as a huge opportunity, not just to win the tie, but he could potentially win his 20th Scudetto.
Wow, 20th.
20th and his 10th Coppa Italia.
That's incredible.
So there's a lot on the line for him personally. And also, Inter haven't beat Milan this season, so I think he sees this as a real chance to get one over on their rivals. So it'll be interesting to see how much he rotates. I mean, in goal, could be Sommer, could be Martinez.
Tough choice.
Yeah. In defense, Bastoni's back from suspension, so he'll definitely be in there, probably alongside Acerbi, but there is a chance that Acerbi gets rested because of the Bayern game, so maybe De Vrij comes in, and then Darmian will likely be the third center back.
Having Bastoni back is huge for them.
Absolutely. Big boost for their defense. Now at wing back, with Dumfries out, we'll probably see Darmian shifted over to the right, and then on the left, it'll likely be DeMarco, but there's a chance that Augusto gets a start to keep DeMarco fresh.
Got to manage those minutes with such a busy schedule.
For sure. In midfield, you got to imagine Barella starts.
Of course.
Mkhitaryan, probably. And then Çalhanoğlu. But there's a chance that if Fertesi is fit enough that he could be involved as well.
Yeah, that'll depend on his recovery.
Up front is where it gets really interesting, because Lautaro is likely out. So it seems like it'll be Thuram partnered with Correa. Now, Correa, his form at the San Siro has been, let's be honest, pretty bad recently. He hasn't scored there in almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
But here's a fun fact. The team that he has scored the most goals against in his career is AC Milan.
That's crazy.
All of them coming when Inzaghi was his manager at Lazio, so maybe Inzaghi sees something there.
That's a fascinating wrinkle. Maybe Inzaghi knows how to unlock Correa's potential against Milan.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about tactics. What can we expect to see in this game? For Milan, I think it's clear that Pioli is going to field the strongest team he possibly can. Coppa Italia is their main focus. They're not really competing in the league anymore. The manager's future is uncertain, so they're going to try and win this thing. For Inter, I think it's going to be a bit more of a controlled approach. They have to be mindful of that Bayern Munich game, a two-legged tie here. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a bit of a cagey affair.
Yeah, makes sense. You don't want to go chasing a goal and leave yourself vulnerable at the back, especially with that Bayern game looming.
Exactly. And there's been a lot of talk about Inter falling into the trap of Milan's counterattacks in the past, so I think Inzaghi will be very careful not to let that happen again.
Absolutely. You can bet that he's drilled that into his players.
So there you have it, a lot of uncertainty around team selection, tactical approaches, but this is what makes these games so fascinating.
For sure. You got to love a good derby.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to touch on some big off-pitch news for AC Milan. So it looks like their search for a new sporting director is coming to an end, and they're likely to appoint Fabio Paratici.
Now, he's a controversial figure, isn't he?
Yeah. He was involved in all that stuff with Juventus, with the finances, the Plus Valence scandal, all of that.
Right.
And he was actually banned from Italian football for 2.5 years because of it. Yeah. But that ban ends in July. He resigned from Tottenham after that. But he has a very successful history working with Beppe Marotta from their time at Inter. They were a dominant force in Serie A for almost a decade.
So he's a proven operator, but with a bit of baggage.
Yeah, a lot of baggage. And there's still some legal stuff hanging over his head. The Rome prosecutor's office is going to announce their decision on April 15th about whether or not to indict him and some other former Juventus directors.
So that adds another layer to this, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But even if he is indicted, it doesn't actually prevent him from taking on this role at Milan.
Interesting. So this whole thing is far from over.
Not at all. And one last thing. There's also a lot of talk about who Milan's next manager will be. They've ruled out a Portuguese manager.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Conte and Allegri have been mentioned, but they're probably not the most likely options. Right now, the hottest name is Roberto De Zerbi, who's currently at Marseille.
I like De Zerbi. Very attacking, very entertaining football.
Yeah. Doing well in League One in a Champions League spot, but they have had some struggles recently. So a lot of moving parts at Milan, both on and off the pitch.
Yeah, a lot to keep an eye on.
For sure. So as we look ahead to this Milan derby, I want to leave you with a question. Which approach do you think will be more successful? Milan going all out for the win, or Inter playing it safe and keeping one eye on that Bayern Munich game?
It's a tough one to call. Both teams have their strengths and weaknesses.
Absolutely. So let us know your thoughts on that. And that's it for the deep dive today. See you next time.